by having that sense of community really helps them see that they have that strength and that power.
Sure. Hearing you have Parkinson's, many people are told nothing else except take these medicines.
Welcome to the Empowered Elder Podcast.
There are certain words that can feel heavy the moment you hear them. Parkinson's is one of those words. For many families, it enters the conversation quietly. A tremor, a change in movement, a subtle shift in balance. And then suddenly it becomes something bigger, something that feels uncertain. But here's what we don't talk about enough. A diagnosis does not erase a life. It does not erase purpose. And it certainly does not erase possibility.
Joining us today is Polly Dawkins, the Executive Director of the Davis Phinney Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping people with Parkinson's live well today. Not someday, not after a cure, but today.
Polly brings insight, compassion, and a powerful reframe of what it means to age with Parkinson's and what families can do right now to strengthen resilience, confidence, and quality of life. If you or someone you love is navigating Parkinson's, this conversation is for you.
We're your hosts, Nicole Robilotto and Tasha Beckman, and this is the Empowered Elder Podcast, where we talk about home, heart, and the next chapter of life. So let's get started.
What's your story? How did you get into this space?
Well, I could tell you the planful approach or the opportunistic approach. I was making a career shift away from. I was working in the corporate sector for a lot of years, and that felt really empty and unfulfilling, and almost where I had been working was almost toxic. And after 13 years there, I stepped away and took a number of years off to reimagine what my purpose, what I was here to do in the world. And I really decided that what I wanted to do was work in either the sort of nonprofit, for-purpose, social enterprise, something for good, being a force for good. And along that journey of deciding what that was going to look like, and becoming, getting on boards of directors and learning how to fundraise and learning about volunteerism and things that I thought would make me a little more appealing to organizations in this kind of space, certainly in the for-purpose sector. A friend happened upon a job posting for the executive director of the Davis Phinney Foundation. And I was looking at a number of different organizations, and I'll have to tell you, she came across that job posting on Craigslist. I know. One that tells you how many years ago. Number two, what was an organization doing posting the executive director on Craigslist? That didn't seem to faze me because I decided to look into it. And I was just really attracted to the brand and to Davis's vision and to this nascent organization and what was behind it. And I knew nothing about Parkinson's, but I knew nothing. I didn't even know who Davis Phinney was. Even though that's sort of my era growing up, I should have known who he was. But what I had been focusing my job search on was I wanted to work, if I was going to be in this space, I wanted to work in a focus of health, wellness, fitness, quality of life, something, this is a pretty big umbrella, but that was what I thought would be a good focus for me. So that it sort of hit on those notes of well-being, quality of life, fitness, exercise. And so I applied. And then I just became enamored with what they were doing at the organization. And it was a very protracted process. But I think it was 8 or 9 months later, I got the role. And that was almost 15 years ago.
And
So,
for listeners that don't know who who may not know who Davis Phinney is or how the foundation was started, can you tell a little bit about that and how it came to be?
absolutely. So if you are like I was 15 years ago, you might have known the name or, been familiar. And certainly folks in Colorado might know Davis because he is a Colorado native. Davis holds the title of being the winningest American cyclist ever. Davis has, I think it's 328 individual victories to his name. That's more than any other American cyclist has. And Davis was a very competitive professional cyclist and Olympian, and really was part of that cohort of cyclists that opened up American cycling to the world. Before Davis and his team and teammates were riding, Americans didn't compete in Europe. We just didn't have teams go there. And so they were the first Americans to go compete in the Tour de France and races like that. Davis had a really successful career and retired from professional cycling and became a sports broadcaster or a sportscaster. And it was then shortly thereafter in 2000 at the age of 40 that after a long series of tests and trying to figure out what was going on with him physically, he received a diagnosis of Parkinson's. And, at that young age of 40, that falls into a category of young onset Parkinson's. And that's generally defined as anybody who receives a diagnosis under the age of 50. And we have, lots of people in their 20s and 30s and 40s being diagnosed with Parkinson's, and that number is growing, unfortunately.
Right.
So that was Davis's legacy in terms of his first career, and now his second career has been to start this organization with a sole focus on helping people live well today. People affected by Parkinson's to live well today, because 25, 26 years ago, and honestly, even today, upon hearing those three words, you have Parkinson's, many, many, many people are told nothing else except take these medicines, settle your life down, quiet your life down, put your things in order, and, come back in 6 months and see me later. And that just did not work at all for Davis. And so through trial and error, and as a professional athlete, also through learning that moving his body actually helped him feel better, he realized there was so much there that you can do with Parkinson's to start to feel better and to be better. So that is why the Davis Phinney Foundation started, and that is our sole mission still today, which is to help people affected by Parkinson's to live well.
It's changing the script, right? Changing what was thought about how to live with it, and like you said, live well, right?
Yeah, and I think what we've learned, and certainly what I've learned being in this community for quite some time, is that 85% of what we talk about and what we now know helps anybody who is aging. So when we focus in the Parkinson's community on sort of movement, connection, and so it's really physical, social, spiritual, perhaps emotional activity. And so that amount of activity in what you do can help your outcomes with Parkinson's. It also helps anybody who's in a body that's aging. And that's been the interesting thing for me, as I work in this field and I watch that, I'm able to take what we say at the Davis Phinney Foundation and apply it to my aging parents who are not living with Parkinson's. And it works for them in terms of, diet, in terms of exercise, and diet and nutrition and hydration and movement and social activity. All of those things are crucial to feeling better.
So when someone gets the first message of you have Parkinson's, what is a way for that communication to come out clearer that preserves the hope and their belief in their personal power to take control of what their future might look like?
Tasha, I think that's hard, because when you hear those words, at least what our community tells us is nobody's ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's ready to reimagine the future and rewrite what they thought their future was going to be. Mm-hmm. So generally, that takes time. And it takes a fair amount of self-awareness and motivation to go from, oh my goodness, I've just been given a life-altering diagnosis, to I'm ready to settle in and tackle this. And for some people, that can take years. Some people, it can be almost immediate. And one of the sort of pernicious things about Parkinson's is that some of the earliest pre-motor symptoms can be mood symptoms. And a mood disorder that comes with Parkinson's often includes depression, apathy, and anxiety. And those are present in many people with Parkinson's because they don't have the neurochemicals needed, just like, Parkinson's is a disorder of lack of dopamine in the brain. Well, there are other neurochemicals that are affected, and having the lack of those neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, and I'm not a medical professional, so just bear with me. It affects mood for many, many people. So if somebody is diagnosed with Parkinson's and has been experiencing depression, which is a symptom of Parkinson's, perhaps for 10 years before they receive the diagnosis, it's really, really hard to go from being depressed and then depressed with a Parkinson's diagnosis and then take action to feel better. So that's where we sort of, as the Davis Phinney Foundation, we try to, if we know that individual and we can help, or our resources can help, get somebody unstuck. But going back to your original question, let's say depression doesn't exist with a person, and what we find is that seeing examples of other people doing really well and doing really kind of amazing things whilst living with Parkinson's is inspirational. And Davis is one of those people. And it's not because Davis is competing in bike rides anymore or doing something tremendously crazy or impressive, like this gentleman who we know who's about to run 100 marathons in 100 days with Parkinson's. He leaves next month to do this. That is kind of an outlier. But somebody like Davis, or so many people in our community who are living life joyfully and full of purpose and full of meaning and contributing, that's an inspiration to a lot of folks. And so by being connected to that and seeing those role models, I think that can help people also realize this doesn't have to be a diagnosis that ends any sort of future I had. My future will be different, but it could be a really good future. And I think as we age, all of us, we might have imagined that we would be doing, amazing things, and then something changes in our bodies or in our brains, and we have to rewrite what we imagined that we could do. I think there's this story that I often hear. Maybe it's a story of somebody going and getting ready to go on a trip and is so excited to go to, I don't know, let's come up with Colombia, because we were talking about that earlier. So excited to go to Colombia and and then all of a sudden their plans change and they end up in Iceland. And even though they had wanted to go to Colombia and they were so excited about this, and they did not want to go to Iceland. They did not want to go to cold and dark and all. They wanted to go to the tropics. And it turns out Iceland is pretty cool too. And I don't know if you've heard that parable or that story of, Iceland can be pretty awesome too. I don't remember the exact states or countries that parable is used, but sort of looking at, yes, what we think of for the future when we are younger, it may not be where we end up. And to be able to adapt and to be able to pivot and reinvent yourselves and to do that with a fair amount of purpose and joy makes a big difference in your outcomes.
For sure. And it sounds like the Davis Phinney Foundation. So when you're saying if somebody is diagnosed and they might not see that strength within them, right? They don't know they're dealing with so much. By having that sense of community really helps them see that they have that strength and that power within them, and they can do so much more because of the encouragement of others. I mean, it's got to be very difficult, but I think you're right. Having that sense of community makes the difference. What would you say are some daily practices that would give people the greatest sense of stability, of confidence, and of that momentum?
Couple of things. One is movement. And I think for all of us, you have to move every single day, move your body. And it does not have to be a marathon. It has to be intentional movement that gets your heart rate up a little bit and perhaps gets you to sweat a little bit. But if you can't get there right away, build towards that. Movement every single day, some form of movement. And what we're learning in the Parkinson's community that I think transfers really well to anybody is that there's this movement disorder neurologist who talks about little exercise snacks. So instead of saying, I really need to move my body for 30 minutes a day, and then that barrier to, I have no idea how I'm going to do that, Nicole, he says, take a little snack, get up and move for 5 minutes and do that 6 times a day, and you have your 30 minutes. And that's just as good as a 30-minute movement break. So that would be the first thing, is you got to move. Another thing that we say is crucially important is nutrition and hydration. Is eating the things that are going to be good for your brain and for your body. And then drinking the water that you need for your brain and for your body. And what we know is that our brain uses so much of our daily calories just by existing. And if you don't feed your brain good food, your brain's not going to work as well. And you're not going to be able to move. Another thing that we know, and we especially all of us know after going through the 2020 pandemic, is that social isolation is terrible for humans. And so staying socially active, even if it doesn't feel good or even if you don't want to, staying socially active. So participating in a class, going to an exercise class, going on a walk with a friend, calling up somebody that you haven't seen in a while, staying socially connected for all of us is really crucial to good outcomes. And, a lot of the studies show that lack of social interaction is equivalent to smoking a couple of packs of cigarettes a day. That is crazy. That if you do not stay socially active, you decline. And so I think those are the key things that I would say every day you got to be thinking about. And then for Parkinson's and probably for others, is rest. Is rest is rest, not just for your body, but also for your mind. So mindfulness, meditation, whatever you call it, is bringing some calm to your brain to bring the level of anxiety, the level of activity down, to have some downtime for your brain to refresh, and then as well for your body. So it's kind of like looking at life as an endurance sport.
Whether you have Parkinson's or not, though. I mean, those are the key ingredients that's going to help you live well and thrive in life. But especially like when you are given the diagnosis of Parkinson's or any disease, is to kind of take care of yourself, right?
Yep. Yeah. And build a team around you. I mean, I could use that endurance sport metaphor and go even further about who's on your team, and you're the center of that team as an athlete or as a person who's dealing with a chronic diagnosis like Parkinson's. But it's around building the systems and the team around you so that you can perform the best you can for the longest you can.
So for someone who is in the early stages of the diagnosis and the process and the programs, what proactive steps do you recommend that they take for long-term success?
Get the right care team. Get the right docs on your team. Most people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's are diagnosed by a general practitioner. And that is great, especially if you're living in a really rural community and that person probably has a lot of experience with Parkinson's. But the research shows that people who find movement disorder neurologists, which are few and far between, if you live in an area like Denver, you're really in good state, good luck, because there are quite a few movement disorder neurologists in the Denver metro area. But if you live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, you don't have that. You have to go to Fort Collins or come down to Denver. But it's worth traveling once or twice a year to find the right experts. So that's probably the most important thing you can do for your overall prognosis with Parkinson's is having the right healthcare team.
Polly, thank you for the work you're doing through the Davis Phinney Foundation and for reframing Parkinson's around empowerment instead of fear. Your perspective reminds us that when people are equipped with the right tools and the right mindset, they can build strength, connection, and quality of life starting today.
What Polly shared so powerfully is that living well with Parkinson's isn't about denying the diagnosis. It's about responding to it with intention. It's about movement, community, emotional resilience, and recognizing that even with change, there is still agency. There is still growth. There is still a possibility.
We're Tasha Beckman and Nicole Robilotto, and this has been the Empowered Elder Podcast, where we talk about home, heart, and how thoughtful preparation and strong community become acts of care for the people we love.